Hello. All right, we're going to be getting started here shortly. I just want to address a couple things before we do. When you come to the front to speak on your project, please make sure you sign in on the sign-in sheet up there. Please also identify yourself and what your role in the project is. We just ask that you speak into the microphone so that everybody can hear you. We're live streaming this right now so that public can see the meetings. So it also helps being heard on that live stream. So just please use the microphone. Thank you.
Call to order the September 16th, 2021 Town of Summerville Design Review Board meeting. First item is if there's any changes to the previous meeting's minutes.
I have one. What is loud? I'm shown as seconding the final approval motion, and I actually voted against the project, so well, I don't think that was me.
Okay.
Somebody did.
I will go back and check the video
Okay.
and correct that.
I'm-
So on which project was that?
It was, Somerville Nissan.
Nissan.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments regarding the minutes? If not, could we have an approval or a motion? Is there a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any
Chris,
opposed?
let the record show I didn't vote because I wasn't present.
Alrighty. If it pleases the board, I'd like to suggest a couple of agenda item changes because of some conflicts and some people have to get out of town. If we could move 6 Oaks Amenity Center to the first order of business and lifestyle communities to the second order of business.
Which one?
6 Oaks up and lifestyle. And number 2. The first. If that's all right. All right, I have a motion for approval by Bill. Is there a second?
Second.
Or any, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All righty. So the first order of business is the 6 Oaks Amenity Center. And Tim may have said this, but make sure you sign in and state your role in the project. And there's going to be a couple of recusals on a couple of these. Thank you.
I think it's around 167 or so in the PDF. This is Mungo Homes, correct?
Hold on, let me get the packet there.
Correct. I think it's like 167. It way down in the
Excellent.
All right. My name is Weston McBee. I'm representing Seaman Whiteside and Chris Carpenter's Architects and Mungo Homes as a developer. And what we're here for is a conceptual review of the 6 Oaks Amenity Center. And I'm just going to run you through real quick what we've got. Just the context of the site, about 3 miles from where we're sitting right now, near the Somerville High School. Run you through the actual site plan here. So the important parts here are the pool house and the Olympic-sized pool, the walled strolling garden there, and then a path that will take you around what's named, what the project is named for, which is 6 enormous, magnificent oaks that are out there on site right now, with their total canopies being roughly 200 by 100 in that, basically that eye shape there that you see to page right. I assume you can see it the same way I can. And in the middle of that strolling path, we have fire pit and shade structure and a cantilever deck over top the detention ponds. Next, please. Plant palette's going to be pretty simple. Most of stuff that you see around here already, nothing exotic. I continue on. Materials, locally sourced brick, plantation mix, bluestone. And next, please. And then more interesting stuff, the Somerville farmhouse style pool house, amenity center. And there's several views of this that we can kind of click through here. Go again. Fireplace, brick footings. It's quite a high, without people in the renderings, you can't tell that it's about 11 foot to that first beam. So it'll be sort of a substantial structure. Got the wood cabanas with the scrim lid and the final axo here, kind of give you a general of the project itself. And again, we're here for conceptual review. So any comments, questions, concerns?
No, we had no major comments. Being conceptual, it's generally consistent with, residential amenity packages.
Take it civil and landscaping looks okay to everybody. Okay. Anything on architecture? Design? That looks pretty straightforward. Looks very nice.
Tell the team.
Anybody like to make a motion for preliminary approval? Or even
This is
final?
conceptual, so there's no actual real vote. So if you don't have any major comments, we can just close and move on to the next.
All right. Thank you for your time.
All right, so we moved lifestyle communities up to number 2. Tim, you have any staff comments?
I think I had some.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ross Rabin with Lifestyle Communities. We've got our mixed-use residential project here that we've brought before you a couple of times here for final review. With me today, we have Jenny Palmer from Seaman Whiteside. We have Kevin Williams from Klein Design and Joe Anastasi from Oz Architecture, who will be helping me kind of present the package today. So just as a quick highlight, just a reminder for you guys, this is a first phase of a multi-phase project. It's going to be 428 units of a mix of townhomes and apartments, along with a 5-acre parcel within the development that will serve as our retail and amenity offering for residents and public alike. So excited to get your feedback on it today and talk with you more about it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jenny Palmer to kick us off.
Hi, everybody. Hey.
Yeah,
As Ross said, I'm Jenny Palmer with Seaman Whiteside and Associates. We're doing the civil architecture for the project. As he also mentioned, y'all have seen this a couple times before. Site layout has not changed very much since you saw it before. I know we had a couple of comments from the board last meeting about the access points off of North Maple Street. And one of the comments was a concern about the planned north entrance not being full access. So since that meeting, we have gone back to DOT and sent them some exhibits showing separation distances and some other images, trying to get them to agree to that being a full access, and that is not going to be allowed by the Department of Transportation. So it is having to stay a right in, right out. We did, though, make a connection from the southernmost access, that is the full access. We made a connection through what is going to be the phase 2 portion of development, so that you can go straight instead of having to go through the parking area for the amenity. So that road connection has been added to go from that full access over to the phase 1 development. And Lifestyle will be doing internal signage as kind of wayfinding, in order to let people know that if they want to make a left turn on the North Maple, then they have to go that direction. I know there were a couple more staff comments from engineering on the traffic study. So the 345 units that they mentioned here for phase 1, actually in the traffic study is broken up in between years that the number of units are going to be coming online. So phase 1 will be in 2025 and 2026. So that 345 that staff notes right there is just for the 2025 year. And the rest will be coming online in the 2026 year. However, the traffic study does have phase 1 at 411 units. So as we move forward, we will work with the town to get that traffic study updated for the correct number of units for phase 1, and also for the amount of square footages for the commercial area. As I mentioned before, driveway spacing, we didn't have a plan in this packet that showed those dimensions. We do have one that we have shared with DOT as part of those coordination about trying to get that to be a full access. Again, it does not meet the separation distance requirements for that, but it does meet separation distance requirements otherwise. And for the other note about the dimensions for the turn lanes, the dimensions that we have on there, or the layout that we have on there for the turn lanes, is per DOT regulations and also per the recommendations of the traffic study. So our final CDs will have all of those dimensions on there. As far as the fourth comment, that's something that we're working with staff on. as part of the overall traffic study. And who contributes as far as all the developers out here who's contributing towards that Next and Parkway corridor study. I'm happy to take any questions that you have on the layout or any engineering or landscape comments that you have. Weston's here. He can talk about any landscape specific questions that you have. It's general palette that you would see, you know, all over Somerville that does well here. We will be doing some extra landscaping around the front and the commercial and amenity area to make that prettier since it is on the street.
Right. Matt, you got a question? Bill, you have any questions regarding civil or landscape?
Still have some
He's still
concerns about
thinking.
the access to the project. And then the right in and right out. It's a weird intersection you got going on at the edge of the parking lot. They're not opposing each other. Is
Where
there
are
a
you
reason
talking
why
about
you're
exactly?
offset? The driveway coming in is offset from the
Out there.
access to the parking lot.
Yeah, that's how it's been. I mean, we can look at lining that up a little better.
Is there a reason why it's not lined up?
Not that I can recall. No, I think it's mainly just to have enough room for the parking spaces in there. And we also had to add a dumpster location up there that wasn't on there last time. And inside the parking lot. Do you want to speak to that a little?
Well, in relation to the intersection in question, there is a very large specimen oak that we're unable to remove, so we had to move the road around it. And keeping the desired radii is why it's slightly offset as such. And along to the other side, same thing. Basically, where we punched the road through is about
Tim, if you wanna scroll down, there might be a better. Sure.
yeah, right there on your page left. Out there is an existing tree alley, and I want to say that was a 42-inch caliber on the right side, and then on the left side it's a continual set of trees.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
But to your point, Matt, I think we can push that down a little bit so that it lines up a little better and try to avoid those trees. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Try to line it up better.
Matt, anything else coming? Art? No.
Let me ask you one question. Is you have retail in front, correct?
Correct.
Restaurant.
Yeah.
That parking is totally independent from the shop, from the multifamily, from the apartments, correct?
It's not totally independent, but it is open to the public.
Well, I mean, you have the correct parking ratio for your commercial.
Yes, as far as parking goes.
It stands alone. You're not relying on any of the multifamily
That's
parking.
right.
One of the neighbors out there was concerned about that.
No, we have addressed the parking requirements for that commercial portion to meet the requirements and not rely on any of the parking interior.
Right.
requirements.
Okay, thank you.
I have one. For phase one, you said there's going to be 428 units
Mhm.
and there's just one full access.
Correct. Now, when the development to the north gets developed, there will be interconnectivity through there to get back on Old Dairy Road, so they can come down Old Dairy Road and come that way too. So there is going to be interconnectivity for the full development.
And I can't tell, but you're adding turn lanes for your full movement
That's right. Yeah,
intersection and your right in, right out intersection. So
that's right. On North Maple, we're adding a dedicated right turn lane for the right in, right out. And
Yeah.
then for the full access, we're adding the dedicated left turn lane on North Maple. And when phase two, for the phase two portion of the development is when the dedicated right turn lane will be added. And we show that on that plan just for future purposes.
okay, thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to the
On
architecture.
architecture,
Mhm.
okay.
Again, just state your name, and your role, and lay it out there.
My name is Kevin Williams with Klein Design. I'm a project designer. And it's good to be back to present our project to you. Just as a refresher, I think on the slides we have some precedent imagery. I'll give them a second to catch up here. Keep going.
Clicking faster.
Oh, sorry. But generally when the image pops up, just looking at the type of product that we have here, which is kind of a townhome row house type of product. And the images kind of show some of that product. And then we have just regional examples of the architecture, that low country contextual architecture that's very prevalent in this region. And then also we looked at some local examples as well of some of the residential examples that we have, and all of these kind of illustrating both a nice scale, traditional details, and just the honesty of place that exists here in Somerville. There it is, right there at the top. Oh, catch it back up.
Which one do you want?
Go up some more. Right there, those images. So that's basically what I was just explaining. Townhouse, row house product, kind of local regional examples. And then on the far right, 3 examples of some local architecture, local houses that just exemplify the detail of what we have here, the honesty of expression of those things. And then below that, you see basically our vision, and there's a rendering there that we showed last time we were here, and basically just illustrating, okay, how do we take these elements, these precedents, and apply them to our own architecture, to these residential buildings, and just to create a type, a destination, really, a place, a home to come home to. And then what's great about this particular typology is that you get visual interest by asserting these different styles of homes kind of put together to create a very unique place, and hopefully a desirable place for those living there to come home to. And then moving on to the elevations proper, just looking at architecture and materiality. We did refine the palette a bit. That was a comment last time. It was a little too much of the town close by, and wanted to create something again that reflected more of the context here. And so we took that into consideration and switched up the palette quite a bit. And I have some samples here if anyone's interested in looking at those kind of more up close. I know sometimes screens can be different than the actual physical sample. And then also looking at local masonry, we spoke about this last time, using either a Meridian product or US brick product. Both are South Carolina-based companies. So trying to keep those things local, using a red brick with a little bit of a flash to it. Both very similar. The only difference is really is in the type or the finish of the brick. So we have a smooth faced brick. And again, I have examples of these as well. And then more of a, that's called a rollback brick. I didn't have a sample due to COVID. Samples are kind of hard to come by, but I did bring a wire cut, which gives a textural difference. And that's really the design intent, is to use similar brick colors, but use texture to give us the subtle difference in the bricks there. And then also just attention to the placement of the unit types, the facade types, making sure we create a nice visual interest across the front, that things are not replicating very often, so that each building, each home kind of has its own kind of unique character and statement to it. And then also just making sure that the massing is broken down appropriately. I think we had a comment last time. There were some areas where maybe that wasn't so much the case, and we kind of went back in and just made sure that we were doing that, breaking up roof lines appropriately, and such as that. And with that, I'll open it up to the board for any comments or questions, concerns.
This is 3 building out. Got 3 building elevations here. How many total buildings you got?
Oh, total buildings?
Got at least 18.
Yes, sir.
Not more.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's a lot of units.
It is.
Lots.
Okay, so we'll just questions about the residential aspect of this.
Colors.
Matt? Can you scroll down, Tim? We got 7, 8, 18. Okay, stop there for a second. I think one of my concerns about the architecture relative to the 3-story elevations is kind of a lack of detail. We got a lot of punched openings and not a lot of trim. So that would be my first statement. Are you using the downspouts on the elevations as a way of breaking up the exterior? Is there trim there?
There's trim beyond. So yes, at some of the rear elevations where we don't really have a physical break in the building, again, just to kind of simplify construction, we did use a trim and a gutter element there to do that, so that we can kind of create a break in the color, or the transition between one siding and the next. We could also look at, looking at different exposures of siding, if that pleases the board. That's another way that we can kind of introduce some more interest there, if that's an issue. But yeah, we kind of made a point to make sure there's trim backing that up, and as well as give something for the gutter to
Sure.
to stay at.
Is there any, I see that the ridge lines are lower for example, in the front elevation that's up here, they're lower. So does that mean that the brick elevations are set back a little bit?
No, actually, those are still kind of in the same plane. And again, we use the break and the roof to kind of create just that, again, that kind of visual break. It may not be a physical step back of the wall, but that was just the best way to do that. So we don't have a roof line that's just going all the way across. We just decided to shorten that. And
Yeah, I appreciate the breaking up the roof line. That's good. I think my main concern is just some of there's so many of these buildings in the development that the backs and the sides aren't getting as much attention as the fronts, which I think the fronts look pretty good. There's not a lot of detail, but there's even less on the sides. And we scroll down, we can see the backs. But I think one of the comments from last time was to kind of break up the back a little bit better, and you did. I'm just concerned that it's still really two-dimensional. That's why I was asking about the downspouts, using the downspouts instead of trim. So, okay. Well,
yeah,
do you want-
those are valid comments, and of course we'll continue to amend these as we go through our design process. A lot of it just stems from, especially on the ends, is you're dealing with units that don't always afford a punched opening on the end just based on program of the unit. So we definitely put those in where we can, but there's usually stairs or kitchens or bathrooms or closets even. And those programmatic elements don't always, but for sure, where we can do that, we will and can do that at a little more fenestration.
Can you very quickly just scroll through all the elevations? We've seen two different style of elevations. They're both the same style, but two different. So this is a no. This one's the most interesting one yet.
U and L.
Yeah, those lighter shaded elevations are set back, right? Okay. All right. Okay, do you want to do the commercial?
Thank you for your time here. My name is Joe Anastasi. I'm representing Oz Architecture, the design architect behind the amenity center in this development. All right, there we go. Thank you. So just a quick overview reminder for the program for this amenity area. Really consists of these distinct uses, right? They each complement each other in a way that really ultimately forms this dynamic social hub, very active, benefit to the community, benefit to the residences, a really sort of heartbeat that really kind of serves the greater purpose in a holistic way. So some of those general programs is on the right, that kind of GOAT program with coffee, restaurant, bar, interior usage, that kind of spills out to the co-work and wellness areas. These two sort of anchors that really sort of tie to that holistic vision of a lifestyle, right? That you're sort of serving that physical, social, and mental well-being of a member of the community. And then that begins to sort of spill out into the exterior, right? We really want to activate the indoor to exterior experience with dynamic uses, pool, sand volleyball, event lawn, dog lawn, really flexibility for events, for opportunities, and again, to sort of serve that holistic vision for this community at large. If we look at the overall site plan, we've kind of looked at it in some of the previous slides. But again, just to orient yourselves on that right side is that kind of GOAT program. We really want a sense of arrival, that this is sort of hierarchy in relationship to the site. You have this direct corridor access left to right through the site, through some of that program. That kind of dynamic interior program, again, spills out to the exterior. It's wrapped by those co-work and wellness centers and really has this kind of wrapped courtyard for the dining, games, and other uses. A lot of opportunities for something really dynamic, really active, for this area. If we look at some of the exterior design drivers, again, I think people, some of these very familiar, but it's important to really be inspired, I think, by the local vernacular. I think it was very important for the team to respect the integrity, the character, and the quality of the existing context. And then how do we take that in a way, then apply it to this sort of use? So some of the things that I particularly find inspiring, I think the team does as well, is that brick detailing, proportions, some verticality, an active pedestrian scale, that active level 1, and how does that sort of activate up the building, material transitions, depth in the facade, especially at that pedestrian level. Some key aspects that we really sort of take these pieces and then apply them to this use. So if we look at the next slide, some of the forms, they were really sort of derived from a lot of these studies for site context. Really sort of, we could break them down to 5 main areas. On the left is more of that continuous porch. So how can we take that and actually have that sort of indoor-outdoor active amenity environment? The second would be more of a gabled roof form, that traditional form that we can utilize as a sense of hierarchy in the amenity program. Again, kind of that same storefront thing. We really want an active, transparent level 1 scale. Verticality is important. Then also, again, that indoor-outdoor experience. So some things we found important, I think, that really sum up the project really as a community hub, right? A heartbeat of activity. It should be inspired. It should be unique. It should be a beacon both for these residences and then the community with some really unique uses. Next, please. And so how do you really take some of these forms, these explorations, and then start to apply them to the architecture? And so some things you'll see here is that kind of side porch reimagined as that sort of amenity deck. I think it's really important to have that layering within the windows and the details. So the insets with brick, you have a hierarchy in the window mullions and patterning, a sense of proportion, a sense of scale. We're using transparent connections to really reinforce the primary forms and allow that sort of connectivity and those scenic corridors through the building, and really bring a sense of prominence to the primary forms. The architecture needs to be layered, I think articulate, sophisticated with varied materials, traditional forms, I think done in a sort of timeless way, right? We want something that's sustainable. We want something that is of the place. And so if we start to look at the architecture, this is the primary elevation there on that sort of goat side. This is on the northeast elevation. Yeah, again, sort of primary glazing there. We sort of taken that form, reinterpreted it with a sense of hierarchy, right? We've got our primary volume at different scales, sort of breaking down that form to this use, breaking down the window mullion spacing and patterning. And then some of those primary forms, you've got your red brick, textured detailing, standing seam metal roof, and then your sort of secondary gaskets between those forms with some of those glazing. Again, this is our kind of primary entrance, so really leading you back through the form. This is a view looking from the opposite side back through the amenity outdoor area. And so the other uses that are supporting the sort of primary form are more horizontal in nature and sort of balancing between the gabled form and that sort of hierarchy, and then the lower ones breaking apart that with different glazing elements. And then you can sort of see that activation of the second level with that sort of porch element, that courtyard we imagined, really active first and second levels for that sort of gaming restaurant amenity usage. And this slide is looking at those same perspectives in elevation. Our secondary elevations there on the left-hand side is the sort of primary entrance, which would be on the northeast. And then it sort of extends back, complementary brick colorings, insets at the windows. Again, a sort of layering hierarchy, insetting those between the bays. And then you can go next, please. And then the more technical elevations associated with that design. Again, thank you for your time and welcome any sort of questions.
All right, let's start down here with Candy.
It's a lot to look at, but that elevation, the real low, where is that exactly?
The side elevation.
See the middle one right there? Is that, where is that relative to these?
Yeah, so the front gable is sort of in the background. That's on your sort of
Okay,
primary
it is
side.
there and I'm just not seeing.
Yeah, it's probably, I'm
Okay,
sure it's
that
faint on
makes
your screen,
sense.
but
I got you. On my screen, it's not very visible.
certainly.
Thank you.
I think it looks great. Takes a lot of nerve to put this amenity complex on the main drag like that, though.
Boy,
Yes,
that-
sir.
Because it's gonna be
busy.
10 times busier than it is right now. And right now it's busy. So it's
Yes, sir,
gonna be a loud place.
Art. Okay. Well, Mr. Soika is not here, but we have permission to read his comments. He's not voting, obviously, but I'll just go ahead and read them. Yep. All right. This is Mr. Soika. I would reject this submittal if I were able to attend. The applicant shows good examples of local buildings, but none are translating into the proposal. The forms and use of materials are foreign to Somerville, including but not limited to large blank brick gables, lack of wood trim between gable and roof, base transition from building to grade, size of glass panels, visual weight of brick piers relative to perceived weight of gable, little, if any, brick articulation in the body of each wall. And he made a point to, under your what it is versus what it isn't, he has said it is not inspired by local vernacular and not authentic. Those are Mr. Soika's comments. And I agree with him 100%. I think the brick elevations, you can go to the rendering of the front. Okay, yeah, that's fine right there. Yeah. It seems to me that, well, the first thing that caught my attention was the use of the pineapple fountain on a submittal in Somerville. That's typically no bueno. But that's not Charleston. That is Charleston or Somerville. And while the Low Country as a whole is one, Somerville and Charleston are very different. And the architecture is very different in some areas. So what I am concerned about is the kind of stark use of brick, the under detailed, it's kind of under designed. Even though you have a lot of great examples, a lot of inspiration, elevations, those didn't seem to translate into the architecture as it would relate to Somerville. It's just really a kind of as far as the middle building goes, it's kind of just a 52-foot tall stark brick building with a lot of glass, and it just lacks detail, especially for a final approval. I'm not sure that this is a lot different than the original concept that we saw. A lot of the same comments. Let's see.
Yeah,
From the, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, please go ahead.
There was some concern at the preliminary approval with the amenity building in particular using Charleston style, although you didn't mention that this time, which is good. Although the package screamed it, making it too large with not enough details. And we're kind of still there, I think. And so it's very, very simple. The massing is kind of the way you broke up the front really does start to make some more sense. And that was in response to some of the comments from before. But it's to me, and obviously to Mr. Soika, who's also an architect. It's just not there and not right yet for Somerville. And so I don't have a lot of questions or more statements, which probably isn't fair. So if you'd like to respond to some of that, feel free.
No, I appreciate, we certainly appreciate the feedback. I respect the feedback. Yeah, and certainly I think there's aspects to it this scale, which do struggle to sort of reveal themselves at that sort of level of detail that can potentially be conveyed both in the elevation. I think that's the intention ultimately, right? To have a sort of sense of, Rolex soldier forces insets, sort of play on that brick especially on the windows. So I could see that is maybe not being conveyed as clearly as it could be, but that is certainly the intention, I think, with the design of the architecture and the concept.
Okay.
I again appreciate the feedback.
All right. Any other comments, or do I have a motion?
Is there anything in that gable state?
Yeah, it's not a separate usable space for that gable, more of a heightened volume for that amenity at that level.
If you're using the square as your inspiration, they all have flat roofs. Not peak gables. Yeah. Hit the button. When you talk, the green light will come on.
It's done now.
Got any kind of gable vents or anything else going in there?
Pardon, sir?
Gable vents? Usually gables have gable vents to ventilate the attic space.
Yeah.
Gable vents in the gable.
Yeah, sorry, we're not to that level of sort of detail with
Say
that.
again?
Not to that level of I think detail within that area.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Any motions?
I make a motion to approve it.
Second?
Who's the second?
There was none yet. Don't put me down in second.
No second.
All right. So no second for the motion. Is there would you like to amend your motion, or someone else want to make a motion, or what, more
No,
discussion?
I think motion dies for lack of a second.
Right.
So you might need another motion.
All right. Somebody else want to make a motion? That motion seemed to tank.
Motion that we disapprove this submittal for final approval.
Deny. Okay, we have a motion for denial. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. All in favor of the motion for denying final approval, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, well, thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All righty, the next item up for business is Harbor Freight Tools at Collins Square.
How are y'all doing today? My name is Holden Brinson. I'm with Jordan Trotter Commercial Real Estate out of Augusta, Georgia. I've got Bryson Jones, our construction manager, with me today. And we are here asking for preliminary approval on our Harbor Freight Tools project. We presented back in July and have mulled over y'all's comments for the past 2 months and feel like we've come back with something that hopefully y'all will like. So Tim, if we can scroll down to, I think concept plan should be first. Yeah, so last time we came through, we had a couple of comments about connectivity from the sidewalk back into the center, which we've done here, extended that sidewalk north to tie into the existing sidewalk. We've also shown a crosswalk that we'll paint across that driveway to the south of our building. We moved the bike racks to the rear of the site and have added a shopping cart lane through the middle of the parking lot. That was one of our comments last time. We looked at flipping those middle parking stalls 90 degrees, but this layout just worked out to be more efficient and kept us from having anybody backing up into that main drive aisle to the south of our site. I can keep going to our elevation if y'all have any questions about our current drawing here. One thing that this shows, but it's hard to see, it's a little bit easier to see on our landscape drawing, which we've included a 3-foot masonry wall in between the sidewalk, I guess along East Fifth Street and our parking lot to, along with a hedge and some required landscaping to kind of hide our parking lot from the roadside. If you zoom in, you can kind of see it there. This is our landscaping plan. So it'd be on the north side of our parking lot in between the existing sidewalk and our parking lot. So it's about 5 or 6 feet north of our parking lot.
How tall is that wall?
3 foot. The site's fairly flat as well, so
What's the material?
a brick. We can keep going to our building elevation. We're about to go through 40 pages of light plans. So last time we were here, we came with a color scheme that was preferred by our tenant and was not very favored here. And we were asked to go back and look at historical brick buildings in Somerville, try to add some unique brick details that are consistent with existing buildings in y'all's downtown area, and also to look at just using one colored brick throughout the project. So we have elected to do the same. We plan to just use the Somerville brown brick throughout the entire project. We've pulled some column detail, the cornice detail, instead of just doing a flat awning. We propose to do kind of a scalloped edge awning that is a little more historical or old-timey looking, and to do cast stone headers and sills around our windows to be more in keeping with an existing historical brick building for this area. The signage above the window will be painted brick with channel lit letters. I think probably next time we come in, we'll have our full signage package to present to you. What we're proposing now in the two sides where it says established 1977 and quality tools would just be simply a painted blue brick with white lettering, similar to kind of what I may be mispronouncing it, the Guerin's Pharmacy sign, something more like that. If we can keep going down, Tim, we should have kind of a side elevation and rear building elevation. We'll have, it shows up funny on, but again, I promise it's all the same color Somerville brown brick with a wall that will shield our delivery and dumpster area from the road. And on top of that, we'll have an enormous amount of landscaping down that side of the road and also on the rear of the site, creating a buffer between and visibility between East Fifth Street and the rear of our site.
Tim, can you scroll up so we can see the back?
Same brick color, the building's 4-sided brick all the way around.
Yeah, one of our comments last time was to consider a single brick color. We had, I think, 4 or 5 going last time.
Since we're on this, it appears that the mechanical units are screened because the parapet wall comes up high enough.
Yes, sir.
You got a lot of brick detail and you're going to school on traditional brick detailing we've got downtown here. So I think that's good.
Yeah, we took that note to heart. We tried to pull from a handful of different buildings downtown.
You have anything else to add?
No, sir.
Okay, and you can later if you need to as well. Okay, I think the building looks really good. I'm sure there's a couple little technical things, but I think it looks really good. I think you're very responsive to what we asked for last time. You should be commended for that. We've got some comments from Greg Soika, who could not attend. He said downtown buildings have strong corners and an overall sense of permanence. Proposed building has weak corners and an overall sense of being temporary. He's speaking specifically, Tim, if you could go to the front elevation. Oh, that one's fine. He's saying the corners where the Harbor Freight sign is, those corners, that's what he's pointing to. But again, proposed building has weak corners and an overall sense of being temporary. I would reject the submittal if I were able to attend. The application seems to be suggesting that they can copy and paste historic downtown details on a cheap brick box and call it architecture. Mr. Carpus, do you have any comments?
I do have a comment regarding the higher parapet areas. I too appreciate the response. I think what you did on the corner makes a lot of sense because it at least gives an impression that it is a raised corner and not just an applied wall that's 12 inches deep. Although I think that at the edges, at the ends of those walls, at the corners, including at the front raised parapet, I know detailing wise, it's a pain, but I really think you ought to return that to give it more of a substantial presence instead of just a thin wall that you can see behind basically from Highway 78. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Just some kind of return. I'm not gonna tell you how far, but just to give it a little bit more of that permanence that Greg was referring to. Other than that, I think it looks pretty good. If anything, it might approval is always influenced by the quality of the rendering, and this isn't bad. It's just there's a lot of red, and Harbor Freight's red. Sure, that's their color. But the brick looks different in the renderings and the elevations, and just so when you come back, if you get preliminary, is that what you're going for here?
Yes, sir. Preliminary.
Just make sure that you have samples so we can see that it's not a big red building and that it's actually good Somerville brick, which can be red or brown, but red or brown. Do have to be careful taking just elements of things that are Somerville and applying them. It's a recipe, and some too much flour and something's going to happen with the cake. And so they really aren't something that are to be applied, because that if it's just used that way, then it does lack some of that authenticity and honesty that that they were talking about with the last people. So those are my only comments. I think having those parapeted areas, I'm not looking at the plan right now, but my last comment would be maybe those areas should pop out a little bit, which would actually help that permanence. And so that there's some variation in the plane, which
The
break
main
it up.
parapet over the storefront does come out. I think we're required to have a 3-foot landscape buffer on the front side of our building, and so that parapet wall does. You might be able to see it a little bit.
Oh, okay, there you are. Great.
So they do.
You already did it. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
That pretty well takes care of the criticism. They've got enough in and out where, because it takes it structurally to do what you're doing with the brick.
Yes, sir.
You've got enough of that going on, and to do the brick details at all, you've got to do that.
Yeah, I'd have to check on the returns.
That rendering just doesn't do
the
it
roof
justice.
level, but that's definitely something we can look into. But yeah, we do have some. Stagger. It's not just a flat front.
Yeah, those returns are going to be important, and that is what I was talking about. And so like the coins at the corners, those returning and going up, it will probably make those areas look a little bit more substantial than even what the rendering shows.
Yeah. And I'll see if our architect can call out
Okay.
a different view of that so we get a better idea for what it would look
Okay.
like.
Chris, can I know that it's a totally freestanding building and different from the other properties, but it is decidedly the color is bothering me more than anything because it's so very different than the rest of it's shockingly different to me. I just think that it ought to have something that helps it blend with the rest of the center. That's just me personally.
In fairness to them, last time, we did say that, I think
You know, I
most of
wasn't here
us,
when you heard it
yeah,
before.
most of us did not like the color of the existing building. So why repeat the same thing on this building? They have a chance to kind of do a standalone building that looks a little bit better than that shopping center. So that's kind of what they responded to.
Well, I think it's okay to look better, but I think they need to complement or you end up with kind of mishmashy looking. And that right now, to me, is what I see as distinctly different and they don't complement.
I saw it on the perspective as I would prefer that low wall to go along the driveway side too, because the goal of that wall is to screen the parking. So when you're driving down 78, you don't see a bunch of paving. So my preference would be for that wall to extend along there as well.
Okay.
And the second thing is double check your species on your plants, because specifically the hedge, because I've never seen that hedge here. I think it's kind of a new material.
Sure.
So just double check that. It may be fine, may not be, but double check your plant palette. Bill, did you have any other comments? Art? Matt?
Are you going to have a dumpster enclosure?
Yes, Tim, if you'll, it will sit right behind the screen wall. Sorry, I should have put the lighting at the end of our presentation.
Lighting plan.
Yeah, so on that plan, you see the two X boxes there.
Okay, so is there an actual enclosure or are you just screening it?
We'll have a wall there. Do you know if we'll have?
We could either match the building, Bryson Jones. We could either match the building with brick, CMU, or fence, whichever.
Well, we're doing a brick
We're good to
screen
do
wall
it,
there. I think he's asking if we'll have anything over the top.
Oh,
of the
you're
green
talking about
clip.
on the above it? We can. I think if we do, would it need any type of sewer access or drainage? If so, we can make it happen.
How tall is that wall that's behind the dumpsters?
Should be the same height as our, that wall on East Fifth Street should just continue.
So it's a 3-foot high wall.
No, I'm sorry, our building wall.
Okay,
So
all
it
right.
should be,
I don't want to see the dumpsters from Highway 78 as I'm coming into town.
yeah, I don't think that's the case. Yeah.
Even if you were to return that wall 5, 6, 8 feet down the back line.
Our typical is 8 foot enclosure.
Okay.
On 3 sides with a latch fence.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board? Right, then we're seeking preliminary approval. We're ready for a motion.
Make a motion for preliminary approval. I'll second that.
Before we vote, Tim, were there any staff comments that we specifically needed to go over for discussion?
Minor Nothing. No, nothing major at all. You know,
We'll work
this is
it out.
preliminary. They still have to
Yep.
come in with final engineering and signage plans. They indicated that was the intent, so.
All right, we'll call for the vote. All in favor of preliminary approval, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank y'all.
That's good.
Appreciate it.
Next item is 1660 Old Trolley Road, a proposed new fitness center and trellises to the existing apartment building entrances.
Good afternoon. I'm David Shook, with Shook Associates. With me is Trey Linton from Forsberg Engineering. There's a civil engineer. This is a project at Somerville Station, which is on Old Trolley Road near Dorchester Road. On the cover,
Sorry.
Yep.
Technology.
Mr. Shook, with the rain, we're having a hard time hearing you. Okay, thank you.
Where do you want me?
go up. That's fine right there. This project is on Old Trolley Road near Dorchester Road. It's a 1980s apartment complex. We've got two projects here. One is a exercise facility, and the other is to add trellises to the entrances to all of the apartment units. The site for the exercise building is on the upper left-hand slide. We're locating it in between the pool and tennis courts. The front of the existing office building is in the lower left-hand slide. Typical apartment units are on the right. At our last meeting, there were no comments on the exercise building. So I was going to move to the trellises.
Okay.
There was one comment from staff, or three comments from staff, which were technical issues.
Yep.
To do with some silk fencing. Other than that, that was the only staff comment. Okay, that was good. The slide on the right is a photograph we submitted at the previous meeting. The rendering on the left is of the Somerville Station apartments. A couple of comments from the board last time were to remove that orange painted paneling at the entrance. It's just on the lower right hand, and we've done that. The other comment was to replace or to add a cap, a wood cap, matching the wood trellis to the top of the handrail. And we've changed the drawings to respond to that as well. I believe that was all the comments from the last meeting. We'll be treating all of the apartment entrances in the same manner.
I have some comments from Greg Swicka. He says, I would reject this submittal if I were able to attend unless the applicant were able to explain the sloped trellis. Trellises are typically flat. He references the flat sample over there. It says, maybe the reason they are typically flat is they look better flat. So could you elaborate just a little bit?
The entrance to these units, and it's hard to tell from that photograph, but they're about 13 feet back. And we felt like the sloped trellis would give a little more visual interest than a flat trellis, because it is such a deep, it's much narrower than the one on the photograph on the right. And it just seemed to be not very obvious as it was flat. Or we did discuss it with the owner. The owner had wanted it a little flatter, but we convinced him that it would really have a better presence if it was sloped.
Thank you. Who would like to get started? Bill?
I think it looks fine.
Candy, any comments? Or Mr. Carps?
The only question I have is where does the top part of the trellis fall relative to the handrail?
Could you slide down to the section?
Okay. I don't have a problem with the slope trellis.
I think you can see from that section that it's a very long ways back in.
Sure. I think it looks good.
We're ready for a motion. They're asking for final approval.
I'll motion for final approval.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item is 209 West 6 North Street, carport and front yard.
My name is Kristen Barenborg. I'm the property owner. In 2005, we bought this property, and then in 2006 added an office to the front. So we both live there as well as it's my office. In building the office, we effectively cut off driving access to the backyard. So we have our parking space in the front, and that's where we park our personal cars. This isn't it, though.
I know.
Oh, okay.
Technology is not working today. It's the packet's so big. I gotta wait for it to catch up.
Gotcha. So there are two parking places where we park our personal vehicles. And recently I got a convertible and I need to protect the top of it. So we're hoping to build a carport. It'll sort of sit nestled into the bushes between a live oak tree that we've planted 17 years ago and some existing palm trees that effectively block view of it from the street. The only place you would actually see it is if you're actually in my parking lot. Since we live there and I work there, it puts it in, I guess, to a strange category that requires approval.
Let me just address that. This is neighborhood mixed use. So obviously permitted to have both the residential and the commercial use. With a residential situation, you go to BZA to allow an accessory structure in the front yard. Because there's a commercial use here as well, you can go to the design review board to approve an accessory structure in the front yard. So we kind of discussed it and we decided to send it here. This is actually going to be used for their personal vehicles. It's going to be behind the existing landscaping that's out here, as I indicated here on the site plan. It pretty well tucked away. It was just kind of a judgment call, which board to send it to, and chose this board. So it is up to you guys on it to approve and you can address the design if you'd like to as well.
Can you scroll down to the elevation or does anybody have any objections to this project or need further detail? I entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
For a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go get wet.
Appreciate it.
I know, right? I'm gonna sit and watch for a while.
Who-
Thank you.
Who seconded that motion? I'm sorry. Hart, thank you.
Next is Martins Creek Townhomes. Tim, any major staff comments we need to be reminded of?
Be a second here.
Good evening. My name is Chris Donato. I'm with SiteCast. We are the civil engineers and landscape architects for this project. Just a little bit of background. This is 5.29 acres of residual property that is inside the Martins Creek apartment complex, which is off of Old Trolley Road. My client purchased the apartment complex, and this piece of property came along with it. He's in the process of renovating the apartments and the amenity center on the site, mainly inside the buildings to freshen them up and make them look nice. So we are in the process of looking at the residual land and what can be done. We've done a fair amount of work to this point. We've met with Towns TRC twice already. We've done a fair amount of field work as far as survey and topo, tree evaluations. We've met with staff to review the trees that are on site and have tweaked the site plan several times to try to save as many trees as possible. We know that we are in front of you, in front of a board that reviews architecture, and we're woefully light on architecture at the moment. It was a recommendation of the planning staff to come before you in a preliminary manner to get your overall opinion of the project before moving forward with more detailed design and things of that nature. So I just wanted to say, we know you need a lot more architecture before we can move forward. But we wanted to go ahead and get this in front of you and get your opinions and comments.
Thank you. Tim, could you scroll to the site plans, and Chris, if you could just big picture, walk us through it a little bit.
Sure. This is off of the main road. So you have to come well into the site. Our thinking is my client would like it to look very nice as people come in to the apartment complex. So we fronted some units along Martins Creek Boulevard, which will be alley fed. As you can see, the green circles are the trees and that we were trying to save, and there's quite a few of them. So we worked very hard with staff to try to make certain that we are minimally impacting the trees that are on site. One of the trees is right on a drainage easement that we have to use. So it was pretty much impossible to not have to remove that one. And the trees that we have removed, as I said, we've met with staff on site and have gotten positive feedback on the ones that we've decided to be removed. This piece of property is, as I said, adjacent and part of the Martins Creek apartment complex, even though it has its own tax map numbers. We are showing the detention pond off to the side where there's also residual land that's associated with the apartment complex. We've talked with this through staff and engineering. This can be handled through easements and things of that nature, so we don't foresee that to be an issue. We have not developed the open space yet. We know we're going to have to put in more time and more detailed into the open space as far as what is usable and what's passive. That'll be coming in the next submittal. And we have added some sidewalks. So everything inside the Martins Creek apartments is private. The roads are private, the utilities are private. But staff asked us to approach the road design as if it were public, which is why we're showing the roads as they are. We're showing some sidewalks, we're showing some access for the people. So that's the approach we took. We hadn't even gotten close to talking about colors and materials and things of that nature. I think we were at this point wanting some big picture if we have any significant issues we need to address at this moment.
Already. Thank you for that. Let's go ahead and talk about the site, and then we can talk about architecture momentarily. Matt or Hart, any comments on site?
Yeah, so the alleyway is 20 feet and then the loop road transitions from 24 to 20. Is that?
The loop road is 24 feet all the way around, as well as sort of the stub out that comes between buildings 10 and 11. That's also 24. And they would look like any, even though they're private, they're going to look like any other public street that's being built today. But the alleyway is 20.
Okay. And that's just intended to be one way.
Yes, sir. I'm not showing this kind of detail, but we're expecting, some sidewalk or pathways from the front of those homes out to the sidewalk that we're proposing along Martins Creek. We'll have more detailed information like that as well.
Any other site comments?
Once this phase of the project is complete, how many total units will be in Martins Creek?
I don't have that answer for you. I apologize. I don't know how many existing units are there, but I can get that information for you.
I think the access to this site is very limited, especially if you're trying to make a left-hand turn out of there.
I'll have that information for the next time.
I think you're headed on the right path. Appreciate the effort to work around the trees and work with staff. I think you've done a good job on that. Before we move on to architecture, Greg Stark had some comments. Said, I would reject this submittal if I were able to attend. This is probably a good proposal. There's not nearly enough drawing to make me comfortable. Perhaps you could show them the drawings for the row houses on Central Avenue. I think if he had heard your presentation, he probably would have been a little bit different. What he's talking about is, they're shown as individual units.
Yes.
So want to see them in a block together to kind of see how that works. I think that's what he's getting at. So, but you explained that. So any comments regarding architecture? Start with Mr. Carpus.
Yes. This probably should have been a conceptual submittal.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that. When I was back there and I heard there was conceptual submittal, I said, we probably should have done conceptual.
Yeah, if it were a conceptual submittal, I'd say it looks like it's on the right track. As a preliminary submittal, I don't think I could approve it.
I understand. And I thought that when I got our comments back from email and I saw the amount of detail and all the submittals, and I was like, yeah, we're way light on architecture. So we get it.
Right. So that's really not a reflection on the design much, except it's just not really enough to grant it full preliminary approval. And part of that is because some folks come back with final approval and want final approval, and they're like, well, you approved this, and I can't. So that's where the danger lies, I think.
We understand, and yes, conceptual probably is a better fit for where we could have been. But
I have a question for staff. Could they, if they wanted to, could they withdraw it and or just change their status from preliminary to conceptual, or does it matter? Or
I think we've had this conversation before as it relates to, doesn't matter if you deny a preliminary approval, or, I think there's more of a significance in the denial of a final approval request. But in the long run, they're still going to be coming back at least one more time, if not two. So could you say it's not quite there for preliminary and we can consider this conceptual? Yeah, we can do that. We don't have to necessarily deny them preliminary approval, even though they may have requested it. You've done it before, if I remember correctly, like 2 years back with the prior project. You just said this is not, as Chris Carpus said, not quite there for full preliminary approval. We're not feel comfortable with it. Why don't we consider this conceptual? And we can address it that way. So it is up to the board. They did request preliminary based on their application, and you can evaluate it based on that and make a motion, or you can make a motion to just call it conceptual.
I
A
think
lot of
we're
ways you can
okay.
handle
I think we're okay on the civil portion. It's just the architecture.
I agree 100%. We made a mistake. We should have not
There's
have
some
done
issues
preliminary.
with rustication and the facades and materials. I don't know what else we should come up with. But
We fully agree. We
that kind of simplifies it, makes it easier for, when you come back, unless we do have any civil issues, which I don't think we do.
Yeah, no hard feelings on our part. We know. Our thought was, before we go down that path of hiring architects, and staff made this recommendation to us, and we agreed with it. Like, hey, let's make sure there's not a elephant in the room here that we're missing, and let's get your first pass at it. But conceptual is a more appropriate review. So hopefully we didn't waste any of your time. Okay.
You would have been here anyway, so it's just now trying to figure out how to move
I
forward.
was hoping I wouldn't have to get wet. That would have been okay.
Come along. All right, well, we can still discuss it. I mean, what do we want to do here?
So material wise, looks like you have some board and batten. Is there any brick, or is it all hardy products?
I think it'd be potentially a mix
Okay.
of the two, unless you tell me don't. But I think there'd be a mix of the two. And I am not an architect. Mr. Campo can tell you that. But
Well, neither is he.
I gravity pulls things downhill. That's what I do. But yeah, sir, the plan is a mix, and we know we got to take a deep dive into architectural. So there's not a lot to comment on. I understand.
But you got the feedback you needed. Essentially sounds like, which is the site plan headed in the right direction?
That's what we need to know.
Okay, well then, I don't want to tell you what to do, and you guys can. Okay. Someone has offered to make a motion, so let's make a motion.
Make a motion to deny preliminary approval.
Second. There's a second from Bill. Any further discussion?
No, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay,
This is
all
what
right.
we needed. So
all in favor of denying the motion for preliminary approval, or denying it for preliminary? Aye. Any opposed?
I've never been happy with the denial. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
I will say that despite Mr. Campo not being an architect, he makes some pretty awesome architectural comments at these meetings. He's had a good eye.
All right, next is the Boone Hill Road. Remember to state your role and name and role in the project, please.
And just to address that, this is a request for final approval for facade improvements and the addition of parking in the front yard. The property is zone GB, so parking is permitted between the front of the building and the front property line. And generally, staff, has indicated, tree removal permit and tree protection board is still required. Not sure if you guys have made application yet for that. And the plant schedule and materials list is required for the landscape plan. I didn't see that in there. And all materials should meet the minimum plant size requirements of the UDO. All right, so 3-inch trees for any of your canopy trees that you're going to be planting, 5-gallon shrubs, etc.
My name is Tim Hazelbaker. I'm a consultant with Live Oak Consultants, and we're representing the owners, Jim Slogat and Chris Slogat. they bought these two buildings, and they want, they're leasing them very well as they are, but they want to maintain increased rental and visual presence for a long range commercial development. It lacks defined parking and access visually for the public. So the project is really just a what we call an entrance enhancement for these two buildings. It's not about the parking lot, although that's what we're here for. And so that's a good one on the left. The main building on the right-hand side of those two properties is 1235, and the other one is 1231. And so there's a nicely defined row of pine trees and a couple of oak trees and some Bradford pear trees that define that one sidewalk entrance. And so it appears to be vegetated from the road. But as we put a parking lot in the front of these buildings, now the requirement for the UDO is to have a hedgerow to screen it from the road, define the entrance, and then finally to have canopy trees in relationship to parking, which is now on that slide, that is your markup suggesting that we put another canopy tree to meet the 60-foot requirement.
Actually, I think that's showing that all of the, if you take the sweep of this 60 feet here,
Yeah.
it covers all those parking spaces there. Take the sweep of this 60.
Okay, so it's not
It
a
shows that it
request.
overlaps.
It's not a request.
No, I was measuring it out myself, and
Yeah.
it just stayed in the
Yeah.
review packet.
Yeah, because, okay. it meets the
So no,
60-foot
you're good
requirement.
on that, in that aspect. That is just showing that all of the parking spaces meet the 60-foot radius.
So
Even though it's not shown on the plan, it's there. I provided it.
All right. So we have included two willow oaks there at the new islands as the road progresses to the rear of the property. And then we put one on each side, same willow oak, because it's a large canopy tree that, yes.
Would you not want the middle parking lot to connect to lot A? So it's not dead end parking?
We don't own it.
I thought you owned all three.
No.
Just the two.
What happened is
Okay.
it appeared that way because we showed the initial survey plat showing all three. However, most of this discussion also centers around the fact that there's an easement for drainage on all three properties. So they are conjoined by a detention pond easement that is on the backside of lot A. So they don't own it, but they want to use it for the easement value of it. Does that kind of answer that? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No, and there's actually a little bit of the other part of some of this discussion shows that there is a grade change right at that point. So you'd have to really start scooping the parking lot down to join those two. Okay, so thanks. That cleared that up.
Thank you.
We, so the shaded area up there shows a detention pond developed, you might say. And I've just shown shading, showing that as the easement gets utilized, that's how much area there is. We've made a calculation for the area of the parking lot and applied it to a 100-year rain event. which is mostly happening today. Just a side note, I've been in Alaska for 5 months. It has rained almost every day that I've been there, but probably more rain has fallen just now than I've gotten in Omaha because it's just a fine rainforest rain. So welcome back to South Carolina for me. Okay, so we referred to the 100-year of rain event for this parking lot. And then we drain it to the very left-hand side there at a catch basin. And then just simply pipe it with a 12-inch drain pipe back to the easement at its point of entry at the property line between lot A and the 1231. There is quite an outfall and a flume. The car wash has a little narrow flume at its rear side, but so all of the drainage is already heading back there through a concrete flume. And then it just falls into forest land, you might say. Now, it's not a detention pond. It doesn't have the backside of the detention pond. If a person were to contain it, you'd have to build a berm back there to contain the detention pond. But it's forested land. It crosses the street. There's another slide there showing where staff was concerned about. Scroll to a photo of the site, I think.
Which one?
No, it's a Google plan photo. Yeah, keep going up.
You talk about a property owned by the high school.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
quite a large canal going through that
yeah,
parcel.
exactly. Yeah, there. So that red arrow essentially takes care of the idea of a detention pond. And I think it would be kind of a waste to build a detention pond and then just drain it back to the large canal. And as you can see, the development, there is a piece of property there, and the roadway between these two buildings runs to the back, and then but there's no easement to use that road to that property. So they either have to have a property that comes off of that dividing road, which is to the apartments. Either way, there is gentle forest land that contains all of the water there. But I have shown if you were to build a detention pond, there would be plenty of volume.
Ready? Any site concerns?
Well, I do have some stormwater concerns, but I would also assume that Russ and Bonnie would take care of that, right? I think you're going to need a pond. You're going to need some kind of stormwater detention here, especially given the drainage issues that I know exist.
Well, there's
in
no
that
more
area.
water running onto that property than there already is. So
But you're adding a lot of impervious area that's
yeah,
presently grass
that's
and,
true.
but I'm going to trust Russ and Bonnie to beat you up over that portion of it.
Well, I was going to show a Google view of where it says Somerset Apartments entrance, and if you get a Google view and you look at that, the property lot A falls very quickly down to that level of the road, so it's quite elevated up there at the parking, and then it's level with the street. So again, it's forest land. It drains to the high school channel, and there's no real room for development. You wouldn't be dumping your water onto a neighbor's property. Essentially, you would just be letting it go into the natural green space. It was the feeling that we had.
I think what we're saying is that'll be worked out with staff.
Yeah,
So Russ and Bonnie and Tim will help you, guide you on what needs to be done
I
for
think
that.
the initial comment was just simply, where does the easement go?
All that can, I think all that can be worked out with staff.
All right.
So
Okay.
do you want to move on to architecture?
Yes, okay. So again, it's a entrance enhancement project. And right, that's a good one to stop at there, just to show there's no architecture being done to the buildings, except they're going to paint it from being a red brick building to something lighter and more contemporary looking. And just because right now it recedes as a dark red schoolhouse brick kind of feeling. And so it brings it forward. And then the lighting treatment is the main architectural feature, with the canopies that we've created defining the entrances. So that's how many entrances, that's how many units there are to this development.
Tim, could you move on to the elevations?
Yeah, that's good enough, I guess, right there. So on the right-hand side is 2 entrances, then a middle one, and then another one. And those are all the exact openings that are there. So we're not changing a single thing about the facade. We're just defining it by these canopies. And then we've done a kind of a architectural trick. Instead of the usual brackets that hold canopies off of a face of a building, we wanted to leave room for signage along the face of the building, because it's actually almost limited. There's a corbelled line along the building. Basically, we've left enough room for signage over each unit. So that's why we held the structure of the canopies in a low level position like that. And it's an overhead beam that captures the canopies.
Right.
I don't see the canopies.
Okay. Oh, just go down to the rendering. See, that's just kind of showing with the red brick. We tried saying, well, you could paint the stripes, but those are the canopies right there. Yes, everything from the face of the building forward is this project. It's I've got a drawing. Let me see, is it in this sheet 5? Hey, keep going, I think. Oh, no, I don't think so. No, because this was for the parking lot, I didn't. Anyway, we've already got a company that's already designed these canopies. There's an overhead C-channel and then these light columns. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. And then that beam comes along and forms this vertical surface that we put a sconce on one side facing the building, one sconce equal facing out towards the parking lot. And so now the building is lit up, showing off its fresh color. And then the parking area is lit up, but it's not an intense parking lighting like an 18-foot pole lighting. It's just area sconce lighting. They are meant to be pedestrian type sconces where they're already in your face kind of thing. So they're not intended to be in your face bright light, but in your pedestrian way.
All righty. I think we have a good understanding of the project.
Part of the landscape issue was to landscape. We put a new sidewalk that the 2 sidewalks were misaligned. So yeah, that's a good place right there. We've joined both properties with the same sidewalk distance from there. It's a 1 line.
Great.
Sidewalk.
Great.
And it creates a promenade effect.
All righty. Thank you so much. Are there any, I think we could start with, we'll go on to architecture. Any architecture comments, starting with Candy or Mr. Karpus?
I think there's an improvement to the building, but I'm not really sure about the lights and the canopy attachment. I'm not, I don't know that it really complements the building. I think it just adds the lighted column and the canopy. I think somehow it needs to be more in context with the building. It just looks like something was stuck there. I'm sorry.
Well, I will disagree politely
It's okay.
and say every building in Somerville should not have a canopy hanging off of it, either scalloped or bracketed. Someday we would like to depart from that a little bit. And the staff or whoever commented on a TRC said that has a little bit of an Art Deco look. That's reaching back perhaps far enough into Somerville's history that
Well,
that
it
we
does
could
have an Art Deco.
return back to some design. And so I'm just politely.
No, it's
saying
perfectly all right.
And I'm going to be here. I've got 3 or 4 projects in Somerville.
Good.
And every one of them hangs an awning in the front of them, you know, and that's my biggest problem. What do you do? You know, so this was my effort to depart in my own architectural element. Say, I got
Alrighty.
something to do.
I don't have any trouble with the awnings. I'm just not really sure about the lights.
Yes, the column,
Mhm.
lights and columns are what
Mhm.
issue for me. Carpus, do you have any comments?
I kind of would agree that, you know, it's kind of ironic, but the most creative aspect of this is the part that I find the least applicable or appropriate for it. And it's like, so I applaud the creativity of the columns and the light, the integration of all that, even the art, kind of the Art Deco reference. It just seems overly complicated for what the building is. It doesn't necessarily dress it up as much as I think that instead of dressing it up, it kind of just creates new elements that don't necessarily go with it. And so it's kind of ironic that I say, great job on the creativity of the columns and the integration of all that. It just doesn't seem to work for this particular building.
But if you go to the perspective view, instead of staring at it like in any one of those, the idea of unifying the sidewalk was actually more important than unifying the individual door entrances, because they're all various widths and distances apart from each other. So we needed something to unify all of the entrances to these units. So the idea that the sidewalk is a promenade is the theme, is the design, is the light columns, the essence of those. Again, you could hang anything you wanted off of these buildings and it would show how mismatched all the entrances are in distance and width, things like that. So we needed some unifying factor that tied them all together. So now the landscaping that's part of internally between the sidewalk and the building with, we've shown on the plan to be cherry and maple, Japanese maples, Japanese cherry trees. And
Excuse me, Bill, do you have any comments architecturally?
My first impression was I don't like painting brick. And then when I saw your canopies with your light details, painting the brick made great sense. And you bring it all cohesively together with your light columns and your canopies and your bricks, so painted brick. Kind of like it. It'll lease up pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty, any other?
That is true.
Any other comments?
I just want to add, I agree with
these
your
little red
Hang on,
brick
hang on,
buildings
excuse me.
recede.
Hang on. Any other comments?
Well, I agree with Tim's assessment of the promenade and all that. And it is difficult when you have offset entrances and there's no real rhythm to the entrances. Part of my issue is seeking final approval. I would be more inclined to say preliminary approval with the comment of simplifying those columns. But that would be my recommendation.
Would you like to make that a motion?
If we're done, are we done talking about it?
Well, you can make a motion and we talk about it.
All right, I would like to make a motion for preliminary approval with further study of the light columns.
Is there a second?
Second preliminary.
Okay. So the motion is preliminary approval with further study of the light columns. Any further discussion?
If you're familiar with those buildings, I think anything you add to those buildings to add interest to them is an improvement, including the parking lot, although you are going to need detention.
Any further discussion? Alrighty, so we're gonna call for the vote for preliminary approval with conditions. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Any direction with, when you say, you're pointing to the light columns, and do you have a direction? Of these previous projects, all had some verbal direction
Okay.
of what you're looking for.
I think the building is simple. And the idea of painting it is great. I think that the columns are over-designed, yeah, albeit creatively, they're over-designed and need to be simplified. Not, they don't have to just be a post sticking out of the ground, but there's another way to do that with it doesn't, they're just too far off from the design of the building, which I admit is understated. How's that? But the way you're supporting the canopies with these light columns is probably overstated for what the entire complex together. And so I would say, excuse me, just simplify them and go that route.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next
Can we
item
take
is.
a 5-minute break
Sure,
real quick?
5-minute break.
Thank you. All right. Is everybody else back? Sorry. The next item on the agenda is 650 North Laurel Street. It's proposed 2 new mixed-use buildings with 12 residential and 12 commercial spaces at Daniel's Orchard. Property zone PUD. The applicant is requesting preliminary approval. There aren't any real major staff comments. Landscaping seems to be consistent with UDO requirements. Actually, I think Daniel's Orchard had its own planting requirements. And generally, the architecture and design of the proposed buildings meet the design guidelines. Wall materials include fiber cement siding, stucco, which is permitted by the Daniel's Orchard PUD, and brick, and a variety of canopies, including cloth, metal, and louvered materials are included. So I can turn it over to the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from this
Sir,
project.
Mr. Halter is going to recuse. And make sure you state your name and your role with the project, please.
All right, good evening. I'm Lossie Knight with LFK Architects. We've got Jake Beck, AIA from our office joining us. We're here with Brian Kaiser. He's civil engineer and also has some ownership in the project. So we're going to team up on this, and I think Brian's going to cover some civil, and then Jake's going to jump into some of the building program, and I'll close with some of the architectural detailing.
So on the civil, this is the existing development that's being finished out. The townhomes are, but everything is under, all the site work is going on right now. The site is being padded out with water and sewer, and utilities all being installed as we speak. The ponds, all the storm drainage is existing, so we're tying into existing infrastructure. And I don't think I have anything else to add. Civil perspective, any questions related to civil?
No civil questions.
Okay.
Hello again, Jake Beck with LFK Architects. If you can jump down to page 13 here, we can get into the program a little bit. Again, as was mentioned before, 6 commercial units, 6 residential units per building, approximately 10,000 square foot footprint, with parking sort of along the back sides of the building and retail spaces towards the front. We're still waiting for the PDF to catch up here.
Which one do you want?
I'm on page 13, architectural floor plan. There we go. There's a good look at the ground floor plan. Again, this is 2 buildings that are mirror images of each other with some exceptions. The kind of general goal here is the facade that faces 78 to the south here as the primary retail facade, with the northern facing side primarily being residential access. So there's residential garages on the north side with access to a shared stair and elevators to take you up to the residential units. You know, kind of for rent retail, with the idea that the unit on the sort of southeast plan here is possibly a restaurant or cafe, something similar to kind of get an activated space along North Laurel Street there. Next page, can take a look at the, I'm sorry, two pages. Look at the residential units. These are all 2-bedroom units with you know, kitchen, living, back porch, again, that faces the more residential side of the development. The idea is that these are sort of senior apartments. But yeah, really the main residential facing areas will be the kind of north side with that open porch, trying to activate the back green space that's there on the site plan. That's sort of like a general overview of the floor plan, and I think we'll let Lossie kind of focus on the exterior architecture a little bit. I get to lower the microphone at this point. Thanks, Jake. Tim, if you don't mind, can we jump to PDF 242? There we go. So as part of our process, first thing we wanted to do is, let's see. Oops.
This thing doesn't love me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Almost there.
All right.
That one?
That's it. Appreciate it. So as part of our process, first thing we wanted to do is just try to extrude and sort of model in 3D the civil on site, just make sure we understand the context. So this is a view. You've got West 5th North Street, left to right on the bottom of the page, or Highway 78, and then North Laurel, which runs north-south on this view. So a lot of what you're seeing, if you guys have been out of the site, you know this is an existing neighborhood. We have the brick monuments up front, a lot of the landscaping and garden-like spaces. Even the brick that you see in this image here is part of the overall, on North Laurel Street. You can see that those big, massive patches of brick are what's existing. Currently, the townhomes, if you look sort of north on the page, you can see those are actually under construction. Those are 3-story townhomes. And then everybody probably recognizes once you get past that, you get into the residential neighborhood. So sort of an interesting condition here where we have this sort of neighborhood commercial that happens along Highway 78. And as soon as we get past this threshold, we get back into a more residential district behind it. So the goal here was to come up with some smaller residential sort of commercial spaces that didn't really feel corporate. If you look up and down Highway 17, we've got, Highway 78, you've got 3 dental offices that surround this. You've got a law office, and then to the right, you've got Oscars. And so something that's smaller and local sort of on that scale is what we're thinking. And then to the left on the image, that's what we're calling building A, and to the right is what we're calling building B. So right behind building A is that sort of common park space, that big green space. Jake was referring to that in the plans where a lot of our portraits sort of open up and give you some connections to those spaces. Let's see. Tim, if we can go to PDF 266, please. All right, so you can tell we have an opportunity here to really sort of establish a gateway into Daniel's Orchard and have this sort of neighborhood commercial sort of define itself as a really great sort of pedestrian space, really building on what's there. So again, everything that you currently see in the foreground is the existing structure of fences and sidewalks and that sort of central monument area. And so as we started sort of trying to determine what our path was going to be when it comes to architectural language, of course, we wanted to go back to the original plan development guidelines. And so this goes back to 2005. We got the Daniel's Orchard at historic Somerville. So it gives some guidelines about different Somerville archetypes. And you guys are probably more familiar with this because you see it more, but for us, we had to kind of dive in. And it was a matter of understanding that there's a commercial village center that was really supposed to be kind of the guiding principle for this. And those are defined by 2-story facades, typically retail on the bottom with large expansive sidewalk spaces for pedestrian use and canopy trees. And then the second floor is typically office and residential. It gets into defining the materials are typically brick, cast concrete, and wood. And then I don't know if you may have seen this document, but it does a pretty good job of showing some examples of buildings that all of us would recognize around Somerville. So that's sort of how we got off in our initial direction of sort of architectural language for the project. And then if we can, and so again, here you've got building A on the left and building B on the right.
Tim, if we could go to PDF 243, please. Appreciate it. So as you can see, as Jake talked about, these sort of anchor tenants that are fronting along North Laurel Street, we wanted to make sure that we were able to sort of activate those spaces. And so on building A and building B, we have this sort of piazza-like space, this sort of open porch that sort of happens along the sidewalk there. So that's sort of an image of how you would experience that coming into Daniel's Orchard. Tim, if we could jump to PDF 267, please. We're sort of slowly zooming in on the project. So. And by the way, this is our fault for not ordering our renderings properly. So we'll try to do a better job of that next time. All right, so this is it right here. Just wanted to show we've got building A in the background to the far left, and then building B in the foreground. And these buildings vary in some of the articulation of the facades, especially of the anchor tenants that front along North Laurel with the groupings of the windows, different types of canopies, and really changing some of the brick color. I'll try to sort of speed up the presentation a bit. And then if we can jump to PDF 250, please. So far we've been really touching on the commercial facade that fronts along Highway 78, kind of working our way a little bit closer to the architecture. So this gives you an up close view of what it would look like along North Laurel, looking at the parking, looking at the retail spaces in building A. And so at ground level, we've got storefront that goes up to about 10 feet with different treatment of louvers and piazzas and canopies. On the second floor, we go to more of a residential double hung style window. Building A, the corner anchor tenant here has some really nice brick detailing when you can see some of the corbelling that happens over the windows and in pilasters. So trying to give some depth to the facade and some brick detailing. So if we can go ahead and jump to PDF 248, we start to turn the corner and we start making our way to the rear of the buildings. And this is when we sort of transition from that commercial use on the front and we start to front more of the internal neighborhood. So you can see we have sort of recessed garage doors on the first floor. And then on the second floor, we end up with these porches that we want to really sort of vary the forms, give some character to each one of these residential units. And I don't think we initially mentioned this, but the intent is that these would be more oriented towards senior living. So every unit has an elevator and just some really great access to outside where these garden spaces would be. We can probably, Tim, just progress to slide 246 if you have that. There we go. And so when we get around to the back of the building, we did want to make sure that we were sort of looking at the adjacent townhomes that are being built just behind us. And they have some traditional detailing, but they also have a color palette that I feel like is sort of somewhat modern. It's a lot of grays and black trim and white. And so some of our color palette back here ends up picking up some of those tones, but you can see we have stucco, we have lap siding in the middle. You can see that sort of opened canopy with diagonal bracing there. And then we also wanted to sort of introduce a warmer element and some of this cedar wood-like material on this sort of residential side. And then, Tim, if we can finish on 252, please. Thank you. So this shows the relationship between the back of building B and the adjacent townhomes that are currently under construction. So we're really more of a 2-story scale and the townhomes are really more of a 3-story scale. That gives you some sense of kind of their color palette and that sort of relationship once you get to the back of the building. And if the board feels like it's appropriate, Jake wanted to sort of transition and just talking about our detailed materials palette, if you like, or we could skip to Q&A. It's up to you guys. Okay. Here you
go ahead and jump to the end of the document here. I don't have my page numbers as dialed in as well. There you go. Materials here, we wanted to be sort of reactive and again, to the surrounding environment. So we've got traditional brick wire cut. We're going to have some stucco of different, different colored finishes, parapet caps, pre-finished metal. But the idea here really is, again, to sort of reinforce the ground floor as being that kind of traditional storefront look with the more residential look above. So we've got storefront windows on the main floor and double hungs above, and then a couple of different canopy varieties. We're trying to play this game sort of both ways between how do you transition from commercial to residential, and how do you make this all look like one cohesive design, but that it could have been built over time. So we're trying to balance that line of what's too much or not enough. So we've called out a couple of different styles of canopies, and then versus building A versus building B, we're just sort of changing the color of those elements. So like number 8 here, a fabric canopy on building A will be sort of a light gray color, and building B will be more of a cobalt blue color. We can transition to the next page and we'll look at some of the residential elements. Again, sort of that contrast between residential on the back and commercial on the front, trying to break down the scale a little bit more of the elements on the back. Traditional lap siding, hardy trim and panel, and bringing in some of those warmer wood elements that Lossie discussed. So you'll see some of those expressed in the post and beams on a couple of the units and some of the headers over the garage elements. Again, sort of when you look at it on the page, it looks like a lot, but trying to be cohesive and really identify what's commercial, what's residential, and respecting the scales of both of those kind of uses. So, any questions?
I have a question, Tim. Can you go to, it'll be number 2, page 221, is slide 242. Well, not that one. Just the, yeah, you can see it on this one, just the aerial. See how the sidewalk in front of the existing brick columns in the rendering just ends? Do you know what that's all about?
Yeah, so in the site plan, it actually transitions to the right and left there, and it goes into sort of those little landscaping areas.
So
That's existing.
It gets out the highway 70.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Gonna get started on architecture. Candy or Mr. Carpus?
If you need the speaker. I think it's going to appeal greatly to both the commercial client and the residential client. And the neighborhood really supports having something like that in the front. It's going to finish it off beautifully.
I like it too. And one of the things that I appreciate, can you go to one of the elevations that shows A and B together? I appreciate the fact that they are a mirror image of each other, but not the same. That's a good bonus. I also appreciate the fact that you returned those high parapets back. It's not just a applied thing that we've seen before tonight. You got the units, so the units are going to be pretty well hidden by the parapets. Okay. I like the transition between the as it goes kind of from more public to private and commercial to residential. It kind of goes up a notch in contemporary, and the brackets kind of threw me for a second, but those actually are I think they actually enhanced the design quite a bit. So, I really don't have any comments. I think it looks great. It seems like there'd be somebody would have a roof hatch somewhere, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you got to get up there. Rich is going to make you do that. So you've got are all the units electric panels on the side of the building? It's all stucco, right?
Yeah, that's correct. The idea, you can sort of see them in this perspective
Yeah.
here on that corner. So the idea that, yeah, it would be tucked along there and then landscaped up against. and like that.
Okay. I think it looks great. I have a non-related rendering program question for you afterwards because it looks great, but I have nothing else.
Alrighty, I echo their statements. The only comment I think I have wasn't mentioned is I think you should evaluate the parks in front, and because from the rendering they kind of look unfinished. Could just be the rendering, but I think that would kind of be for me. It would be kind of considered one of the elements of this project. You know, maybe not officially, but it seems like it would complete it. So I know that those parks are kind of old now, or not old, but they've grown in. So I think those should be evaluated and make sure they respond to the space you're creating. And one concern I have is, should there be a brick wall along the parking lot that would kind of enclose that park in brick? Maybe, maybe not, but something you got to kind of at least look at and see how all that space is accessible from this space, because people are going to come out of these buildings, whether the residents or guests at the restaurants and that sort of thing, and that could, I'd see, easily become outdoor dining and all kinds of stuff. So just kind of take a look at the park. Bill?
Trash, what you gonna do with trash? Dumpsters, rollout carts, what? Because I don't see any trash containers.
Yeah, we're thinking rollouts.
I think you could do rollouts in a project like this,
Yeah. We need to think it through.
but you gotta hide them somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're gonna put that one down as well. We can.
it's easy.
Yeah.
Pardon, anything? All right, any other comments? They're asking for a preliminary approval. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion.
Make a motion for preliminary approval.
All righty, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
I do have a discussion.
All right,
item.
yep. Well, I said it as soon as I was thinking further discussion.
That's okay. We're not asking them to make a whole lot of changes here, except to look at the park. Would this merit a final approval? More of a question for everybody though.
So okay with me. I'll amend my motion.
I don't.
Staff could handle a little bit of rest.
I don't think there's substantial changes that would need to be made. So
But not, we haven't asked for anything. I don't know where you're gonna put the trash can.
Right, that's, I don't know that that's a good reason to say hit the bricks with your preliminary approval, but if we want to amend that, I'd certainly be in favor of it.
and do you want to amend the motion?
Yeah, I will amend the motion for final approval with comments regarding trash and addressing the park area.
All right, and
I'll second.
okay. So I guess we need to vote in favor or not of the amendment. So all vote in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Now we have to, I think, vote on the official. So in any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Tim, is there any other business?
No, there's no additional business at this time.
Bill made a motion for adjournment.
Yeah.
Hart, I could read his mind. Right.